Great. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. I appreciate it. I'm Laura Lupe. I'm the Associate Vice President for Budget and Planning. And thank you for attending both in person and online today's Spring Budget and Planning Forum. Today, I will be providing the spring budget briefing, which is where I give a detailed presentation on our planning for the 2025-2026 budget year. And before I get started, I just want to say that I've been giving these presentations at the forums for many years, both in good budget years, back when I can remember when those were, and in difficult budget years. But this year is the most challenging budget year by far. So I just want to say that as I go through this presentation and through the budget reduction plan that I'm going to go through, I want to note that I'm aware that this plan is affecting our campus community in very real ways. And it's not just lines on a slideshow. So I want to be aware and sensitive to that and bring that into the room before I go on. So having said that, and we're all aware of that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with one of the drivers of our budget planning, which is our state allocation. So every year in September, the Board of Trustees submits a budget request to the state asking for increased funding to the CSU. And this is a base budget increase request. And you can see that illustrated here on the left-hand side. And how we would spend that is detailed there. And this includes multiple funding sources. The first is the compact funding. And this is funding that the governor has indicated we would get each year, which is a 5% increase to our state allocation. There's also the 6% tuition increase that the Board of Trustees passed, as well as increased tuition from enrollment funding. And there's also an additional request from the state above the compact funding. In January, the governor released his January's governor proposal, and that's illustrated on the right-hand side. They're like mirror images for me, so I'm making sure they're all on your right, on the right-hand side. And as we, looking back to last year, as we were planning for the 24-25 budget year, California was having a multi-year budget gap. And so they deferred the 24-25 compact and gave all state agencies an 8% budget reduction. And at the time, we thought that that was going to apply to CSU as well. But before the 24-25 budget was finalized, the legislature came through and funded the compact for the CSU and postponed the 24-25 8% reduction for just the CSU and the UC to 25-26. So what you're seeing here is that 8% budget reduction that was postponed to 25-26. And that's the $375 million system-wide cut. So also for 25-26, the CSU would fund our mandatory cost increases from that 6% tuition increase. So the total net base increase for the CSU for 25-26 would be $164 million. Overall, the budget for the state of California for 25-26 is still not looking good. The January governor's budget is a balanced budget for the state of California, but it includes the 8% budget cut to the CSU, and compact funding has been deferred until the 27-28 year. So what that means for our campus planning is that we need to fund our mandatory costs from our own funds, essentially. We'll get some of that 6% tuition increase on our own tuition, and we have to plan for that 8% state allocation reduction. So I'll go over that detail when I go over our own campus plan detail. As we move forward through the rest of this budget planning year, the governor will release a revision to his budget plan in May after most of the tax revenues are collected for the state. The legislature will finalize their budget plan in June, and the governor will sign it. And then we will know what our campus budget allocation is of the CSU budget in July. So before I move on to our campus budget detail, I'm going to go back and provide a little historical context on our campus budget reductions over the past few years. And as I talk about that, it's important to understand the impact of our enrollment on that budget deficit. So this slide shows our enrollment, our annualized head count over the past 10 years. And you can see that our highest head count year was 2016-17, and then our head count really started to decline beginning in 2019-20. Our lowest year was last year, 23-24, and our head count started to increase this year in 24-25 as we brought summer session over to the state side from extended education. Our head count has a direct impact on our tuition revenue because students pay tuition, and tuition is a large part of our revenue budget in our operating fund. This slide shows the methodologies we've used over the past 4 out of 5 years to take budget reductions in the campus operating budget and how much our base reductions were each of those years. So in 2020-2021, that was the first year of base budget reductions. We did a prorated budget reduction to each division of 12% and took $8.2 million of base reductions. That was not the full base budget deficit, and the rest of the deficit was closed using one-time money. In 21-22, we had received a lot of federal one-time funds due to the pandemic, and so we used those and other campus one-time funds to bridge the deficit. But when we got to 22-23, it became clear that we needed to do more work to balance our campus revenues and expenses permanently, and so we took more base budget reductions. To do that, we launched the early exit program, and we did another division budget reduction by a prorated share of the base budget deficit. Then in 23-24, we expanded the early exit program out to the voluntary separation incentive program. And we started pooling all vacant positions centrally to have a more strategic approach to those positions that were being vacated. We also reduced the instructional pool to start aligning it with the lower headcount due to the decline in enrollment. And then this year, in 24-25, Academic Affairs had done a reorganization and had identified some base savings related to that reorganization. And we took another cut to the instructional pool related to the continued decline in enrollment. Altogether, over those 4 out of 5 years, the university has already taken $26.3 million in base budget reductions, largely through attrition of positions and reductions to the instruction pool related to loss of enrollment. Those have not been easy. Those have been difficult cuts, and I know they've been felt all across campus by each and every one of you. So now that I've provided some historical context, I'm going to move on to the details of this year's budget planning, well, for next year, for 25-26. So for next year, we're projecting a $23.5 million budget deficit. This number has changed and has been in a couple of planning estimates. That's pretty normal as we go throughout the budget cycle, but I will note the numbers that have changed as I go through the detail. So this year, 24-25, we had a budget deficit. And as I said on a previous slide, we took a $5 million reduction, and the remaining deficit is about $7.4 million. So as we go into next year, that is our beginning point for planning. So we have to close that to begin with. Moving on, we know that we're planning for a CSU-wide state budget reduction. Our portion of that $375 million is about $6 million. This number has changed. It was originally a $397 million reduction to the CSU, but the CSU worked with the Department of Finance to remove the capital outlay payments from the calculation. So they reduced it from 397 to 375, which reduced our campus share from about 6.3 million to 6 million. Next, in preliminary planning, we were anticipating that our headcount would stabilize, our academic year headcount would stabilize, and also that we would increase our tuition by the 6% increase approved by the BOT, the Board of Trustees. This budgeted amount would be slightly lower than the current year budget, though it would be stable based on how many students we actually have, because we budgeted for additional headcount this year, but we ended up graduating more students than we expected. So this is a decrease to our budget, even though our headcount has actually stabilized and is increasing with summer. So next, we have a decrease to our cost allocation revenue. These are funds we collect from our campus partners and auxiliaries, like parking and housing and campus union. But this decrease is related to the wind down of extended education, because they will no longer be paying that cost allocation share back revenue to the campus. Next, we have some small adjustments to other campus revenue. Next, because we are under-enrolled, the Chancellor's Office is reallocating target and the associated revenue from campuses that are under-enrolled to campuses that have the capacity to grow. This number has also changed. In preliminary estimates, it was going to be a 5% reallocation, and it's now 3%. And finally, we are projecting impacts to our enrollment based on the program eliminations in our deficit plan. So that is all of the total changes to revenue that we're estimating for next year. We also have some adjustments to expense. These are primarily utilities increased cost. The price of utilities continues to rise, and that is unfunded as we're not getting any new funding from the state, as well as unfunded increases to compensation. And this is primarily health benefits. These are, again, usually funded from the state, but we're not getting any funding from the state to fund it this year. Finally, we have built in a 5% contingency to our plan this year. And so that totals the 23.5 million for the projected deficit for 25-26. The interim president had a mandate to close our budget gap this year. And so I'm going to go through the details of the budget plan to close that gap. These are all ongoing base strategies to close the budget. First, reduced instructional costs of $8 million. This includes the elimination of 23 degree programs. Discontinuation of NCAA athletics. Reorganization and MPP non-retention of $3.8 million, and vacant position eliminations of $3.3 million. Reduction in university-wide budget lines of $1.7 million. We are also looking to explore alternative funding sources, about $2 million, and multi-university collaboration to leverage efficiencies of other CSUs of about $1 million. In total, those strategies will close the budget gap and balance our budget permanently for the $23.5 million. Overall, as I said before, we are still in the budget planning cycle. The numbers I've shown you will still shift as we move through the rest of this planning year. And there is advocacy happening at the Chancellor's Office. The CSU and others are advocating heavily for the CSU and Sonoma. So I do want to note that as you saw the deficit, we have a larger deficit than just the state budget reduction. It was important for us to start early on the planning for this. But we have launched a process to take into consideration a contingency and call for proposals if the budget picture does shift over the next couple of months. And Provost Moransky is going to get up and talk about that in just a minute. So as I said before, we will continue to work on the budget plan as we get new information over the next couple of months, from the governor's May revision to the final budget in June, and we'll finalize the campus budget in July. So that's my presentation and the detail for the budget as we know it now. There is more information, as always, on the budget website, including our current budget plan available in open book. And you can always email me or my office with any questions. This presentation and a recording of the forum will be available on the website as well the presentation will be up soon. The recording will be up in the next week or so. And I really appreciate your time and attention today. So I'm going to turn it over to the provost for some details about the process review. Thank you.
Again, not behind the podium. So hello, thank you, Laura. Laura is often someone who's put in the position of having to give any budget bad news that there is. And that is a very difficult position for one person to be in over and over and over again. So any appreciation you can show to Laura for the work that she does to try to keep us all informed and to ensure that we have the best numbers available, I would sure appreciate that. So thank you so much. All right. I am going to talk a little bit about process. And let me kind of talk through a couple of things that are happening and try to distinguish various things that are happening. So, as you know, in the legislative forum, our legislators called for a turnaround plan, a plan to move the institution forward in 30 to 60 days. We're on about day 18 of that 30 to 60 day period. There is a lot of work happening with the legislators, individually and collectively, as well as with the Chancellor's Office, to get the parameters of that plan honed down. So that work is happening. In the meantime, one of the things that, again, kind of was expressed in the legislative hearing is that if there were funding that came back to the university, if they reduced the 7.95% cut at the legislature, for example, there would be money coming back to the institution. And the president wanted to establish a process by which we would make decisions about how any funds that came back to the institution would be used. So she asked the University Budget Advisory Committee to take on that work of taking in proposals and being able to work through those, to offer recommendations to her about what might be done with any funds that came back to us. So that process is what I'm going to talk about now as we go through this University Budget Advisory Committee proposal review process. So in terms of guiding principles, the campus was asked by the president, the UBAC was asked by the president to really commit to a set of guiding principles that we have tried to hold throughout the last few years, but particularly this year. Student success being the first of those, students first, student success first, and the second is equity, inclusion, and belonging per our strategic plan and per our commitment to that work over the last 9 years or so. And also to an innovative and sustainable future. We have to create a Sonoma State that can thrive moving forward. And that is really a critical part of the process that we need to go through as a campus, is figuring out what sustainability looks like and how we become more innovative as we move forward. The last guiding principle is about engagement with the North Bay community. As we have thought about our work, we think about our work in terms of stewardship of place, of being present in this place, in Sonoma County, in the North Bay, in Northern California, and really ensuring that we are doing the very best that we can to serve that community, to serve the people in that community, to be a source of intellectual life, and to also keep people in the Bay Area after they graduate from Sonoma State and stay here to build families, to build lives, to work, to play, to be here. And we see that as an antidote to the aging population of our region. And so engagement with that North Bay community is a key fourth principle that we want to use as we think about thrivingness. The UBAC process is what we want to talk about, and the timeline that we will use. So there has been a call for proposals. Those proposals will be reviewed by the University Budget Advisory Committee. So you can submit that. If you don't have that email, let us know. Send an email to budget@sonoma.edu, and we'll be happy to get you that proposal information. We are working on a rubric for decision making, and that's in process and is being finalized. We know that some of you have shared some of that information as members of the UBAC community are starting to share that, and we'll also send out an email so that everybody has all the information about the ways in which UBAC will review proposals. In April, UBAC will begin its deliberation, complete its deliberation, and a proposal and a set of proposal presentations will happen for the committee. So they'll do a little bit of prioritizing, narrowing to some proposals that seem to be most aligned with our guiding principles. And then we'll have proposal presentations to the committee. In May, the UBAC will provide a recommendation to the president. And then, of course, in July, that budget will be finalized with the legislature having acted and with the chancellor's office providing us with our allocation for 25-26. And we'll be able to finalize that. So that process is the one that we're suggesting we use, that we're using as we move forward. If you have questions about process, you can again email budget@sonoma.edu. Laura and I and various folks will try to respond to those questions. I also will wander among the tables in the discussion that we're going to embark on, and I'm happy to try to answer questions or take questions and get an answer back to you. So feel free to use any of those mechanisms if you have questions. And we're going to now move into roundtable discussion. And the purpose of the roundtable discussions, just again to clarify purpose and make sure that you're aware of what you're doing. And we really invite you to stay and participate in every way that you can. But what we want those roundtable discussions to do is be a brainstorming session, a thoughtful conversation about the pathways that we can take as a campus toward thrivingness, toward sustainability, and that remember is part of what we want to do as a campus to get feedback from the campus community and to think about that both the UBAC process and the proposals that come forward. So this is a place to brainstorm some of those proposals that you might have and work them, workshop them as you talk with people. And to also think more generally about that turnaround plan that we're continuing to try to narrow into some kind of shape that we can get down in writing and talk with the campus about. So this roundtable discussion is really designed for to brainstorm those proposals for UBAC. But we will be taking notes. There will be people at each table to take notes, to think about, to get those thoughts down, to make sure that we have those notes. We type those up every year. Every time we do this kind of roundtable discussion, we type those up and we spend time going through them. And in this case, we will do that with great interest as we hear what the campus's ideas are. So, Laura, do you want me to dismiss to tables? All right. Yes. Yes. Tim and Qingling. So that is, I think we need to think about both. I think that at your table, if you would like to focus on the programs on bringing back programs that that exist now and that have been impacted by the cuts. That's absolutely the kind of proposal that that you can submit. We just don't want to limit it to only that. Yeah, Qingling. And we are. Thank you. And I appreciate that perspective. And don't, I understand. Advocacy is happening, as Laura mentioned in her comments. That advocacy for rolling back some of those the legislative cuts are is happening in very forceful ways. And so that is happening. But we also, as we move through this, I talk about parallel processes, and parallel processes are not always great. They are not always easy. But we do have to think about what the future looks like as we try to figure out whether the chancellor's office or the legislature is going to do something that would impact the cuts that we have right now, and it does have to be both. And I'm going to not take very many more questions because we actually have work to do, and I need us to do that work. So I'll take 2 more questions, and that's it. We need to move to the roundtables. Michelle. I, so um, that's a great question. I'm going to be straight. And Don, I don't know if that was your question as well. Um, uh, the cuts have been made. I Nobody likes them. Nobody wanted to make them. The cuts have been made. The budget cuts are scheduled to move. But we know from the legislative hearing that there is advocacy and that there is some ideas that we might be able to roll some of those cuts back. It's none of us are exactly clear how that would work or what we would do, but we have to plan as if the cuts are moving forward. We have to do that because that's the only way we can budget in an environment in which we are $24 million in the hole. There is no other choice to do that. And what Don is the last question.
So what you're doing is responding to the governor's proposal, and it's actually the legislature that makes the decision on budget. So the cuts that you're making are to a proposed budget by an administrative entity who is not actually the one who's in charge of the budget being cut as the legislature.
No, I understood.
Assumption of the governor's agreement, which is not what the legislature is going to necessarily do at all, right? It may have no relationship to one another, right? So given that that's the case, given that
Hang on.
parking lot, any proposal, and we only think about what is coming out.
These tables are for you to talk about. But know that there is no way that any institution can wait till a month before, to after July 1, to plan for the year that starts July 1. So you can't do that. You have to plan on what you have. And Monir, I don't know if you'd like to.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the 7.95% cut is not governor's idea. This was what the legislative body approved 2 years ago. UC and CSU were deferred a year. I can't go in a back and forth. I'm giving you factually what happened. Legislature decided to defer for UC and CSU. Today's plan, as we know this, the Department of Finance is planning on balancing the budget, including 7.9% cut into the budget. We don't know anything more than that. We can't plan for anything. We can't really act on anything, but we have to plan. And the idea of collecting the proposal here is that plan, not to act on it. What we acted on is, as the provost said, that cut decision has been made based on the information we have. We are planning for what may come. And that's the idea here that we are generating, right? So we should probably go to the round table and help brainstorm and put some of these ideas, whether it's bringing back existing programs or starting new. So we are stopping the Q&A to go to the round table.